Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Gendered Economics, where we explore the intersectionalities between economics and gender equality with quantitative data. My name is Irem, and this week we will be focusing on the top 2025 wins for gender equality in the European Union. So let's get started. The case that we're going to tackle is about the same-sex marriage. Two Polish citizens who were living in Berlin and who got married in Berlin, Germany, went to Poland because they wanted a legal recognition of their marriage back in their home country, but they were denied by Polish authorities on the grounds that Polish law actually doesn't allow same-sex marriage. They took this case to the European Court of Justice, which is the highest court in the EU to interpret EU law, and the Court of Justice actually sided with them, saying that EU member states are obliged to recognize a same-sex marriage between two EU citizens that have been lawfully concluded in another member state. Now you might be thinking, Irem, we thought this was an economics channel. Why are we talking about family compositions and same-sex marriages? Well, actually, the term economics dates back to ancient Greek, and it comes or is derived from the term oikonomia, which is a composition of two words, okios and nemein. Okios means family and house, and nemein means management. So technically, economics has derived from a word that means family or house management. The main focus was really on how to better run a household, how to manage the assets, how to deliver the tasks, how to split the income in different ways, and how to sustain a family. But throughout time, of course, this definition changed. And one of the biggest changes came with Adam Smith, who's also known as the founder of classical economics, who brought the term economics away from just economy and embedded in political spheres by calling it political economy. According to Adam Smith, economics was an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. And with this definition, he shifted the focus from household to nations. Adam Smith also had this theory called the invisible hand, which basically believed that if you would leave individuals to act in their best own interest and do not intervene in these actions, they will actually do things that will benefit the society as a whole. But it had a downfall. If you let individuals just do whatever they want, they sometimes did things that didn't really benefit the society. And this is where we also started seeing certain market failures. So market failure occurs when allocation of resources by a free market structure is not efficient, and it actually creates social welfare loss. So there's a negative cost of not intervening. A really good example of a market failure and why governments sometimes should act can also be taken with the case of rape drugs. So in 2025, Germany actually decided to classify rape drugs as weapons. And what this meant, this classification as weapons, was that now harsher minimum sentences could be used by law, and there would be a recognition of chemical violence that has already been going on. But the main idea behind all of this was also to control and deter sales, because now that they are weapons, their sales will also be more restricted. Of course, not everything has to do with crime. When it comes to market failures, sometimes it just happens that the way that the markets work actually hurt some vulnerable people because of an inequality that wasn't accounted for when the system was designed. And this is also the case with regards to period poverty. Period poverty is generally referred to as the lack of affordable access to menstrual products, hygiene facilities, and education. Malta has done an amazing work in providing free period products to all secondary school students and actually removed the value-added tax from menstrual products. Now, by removing the value-added tax, they essentially declared period products or menstrual products to be essential goods. And what they said was that everybody should have a right to access these goods. And this brings us to a definition of economics as more also welfare-oriented, which goes hand in hand with the understanding of economics as Alfred Marshall also defined, which is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. Now, by putting ordinary business of life and focusing on the mankind, Alfred Marshall actually introduced the idea of how economics can be a study of people. and expanded on the wealth definition by adding a foundation for human welfare definitions to also be included in economics. So we're no longer talking about economics as a separate study that's just focusing on wealth, but we're also trying to ensure that people get the things that they deserve and there's a social benefit, social welfare that's being created for humans. And a very opposite side to this social welfare is obviously violence. Unfortunately, according to the European Institute for Gender Equality, gender-based violence across the EU actually costs 366 billion euros a year. Crime costs money in terms of administration, it costs money in terms of productivity, it costs money in terms of welfare of its citizens. That's why it is quite important to tackle crime ahead of time. We've seen great examples of how this can be done in various methods, starting with Italy, who has actually introduced the crime of femicide, which is the murder of a woman motivated by gender, as a distinct law. By doing this, it allows for police authorities to also research and gather data separately as a category, and it will help pinpoint exactly how common femicide is, beyond also having additional resources to tackle it. Of course, just introducing a crime is not enough. You also need to work on the definition of what it means and improve the definition. So a good way to tackle this, as shown by France and Norway, is to strengthen the definition of rape to include any sexual act without explicit consent. And last but not least, of course, there came a creative solution. Portugal made rape a public crime, which means that instead of only the victim being able to report this crime, now everyone that witnessed a crime such as rape can come forward and file a report with the police authorities. This is a good solution to make sure that we shift the mentality that the rape is something that the victim only has to deal with, and it's more of a social responsibility that societies overtake. 20 million women lack access to a safe abortion process due to legal and practical barriers. And this was a great point brought up by the European Citizens Initiative, My Voice, My Choice for Safe and Accessible Abortion, which was one of the most successful European citizens initiatives we've had in the recent years, that managed to gather over 1.2 million signatures and gathered the support of the European Parliament. But that wasn't the only improvement that was made. Portugal introduced paid menstrual leave for severe pain from endometriosis and adenomyosis. This is a great way to also make sure that productivity is reserved in the workforce, because by allowing them a paid menstrual leave, you're essentially telling them, I know and I recognize your pain, and I still value your presence being here, and I want you to be productive. I don't want you to be in pain in the office. I want you to come back and be more productive once you feel better. In the same similar fashion, the members of the European Parliament approved pregnant legislators to vote via proxy for 3 months before and 6 months after the birth. Giving them the right to proxy also sends the message that mothers are welcome and they don't have to give up their elected dreams to actually pursue motherhood, which is great to see. I hope that this video has shown you that economics is more than just money. It isn't just about a paycheck. It isn't just about an income. It is really about how people interact within each other, within the markets that they belong in, what decisions they make. So in this channel, we will be defining economics as the study of how we, as individuals, as households, and as governments, can better allocate resources such as time, money, labor, to create a more equal world for all. Drop down below in the comments your thoughts on what measures were done in 2025 that you found to be important for you or your community with regards to gender equality, and see you in the next video. Bye!